Welcome, everybody, to another weekly Village Torah portion discussion with me, your host, Rabbi Drew. This week's Torah portion is a double Torah portion, Matot-Masei. It is actually a pretty lengthy Torah portion. And like a lot of the recent Torah portions we have seen in the book of Numbers, it is got a lot of things going on. It's hard to pick out what to choose, but for this year, I wanted to choose, there actually are the carving out of certain cities. So in one part of this Torah portion, there is the carving out of cities specifically designated for dwelling of Levites, the tribe of Levi. Right after that, there's another carving out of different cities. And this is a really fascinating notion. In Hebrew, it's called Are Miklat, cities of refuge. Now, this is, as we're going to see, I'll just basically frame it, though, which is the notion that when there are accidental murders, it's an accident. There are literally cities of refuge where the accidental murderer can flee to. And although we're going to go into it, we're going to dive into it. We're going to see what it says in this week's Torah portion as far as the cities of refuge. I actually want to take a step back before we get there, because so I actually was recently exposed to this notion that, and this still, it's one thing for something like this to exist 3,000 years ago, right? So a few thousand years ago, there's this notion that if someone kills someone else, then someone is meant to avenge that murder, that death. So that's one thing for that to be taking place at the time of the Torah. And this is clearly what we read of in this week's Torah portion is directly speaking to this practice, to this notion that you could have a retaliatory tit for tat, that someone kills someone from one family and then there's a blood avenger. Essentially, they are avenging the death of their own kin, their own blood. So then they have to retaliate by taking the life of someone from the originating family. That was 3,000 years ago, and presumably it still existed 2,000 years ago at the time of the rabbis in certain places, and maybe even 1,000 years ago. The utterly shocking thing is that it still persists to this day. Now, I really was shocked to hear this when I was started looking up about this week's Torah portion and heard of a story where in Upper Egypt, so Upper Egypt, which is southern Egypt, it's just the way that so it's not close to the Mediterranean, but it's further down south in Egypt, is that, and it's not restricted whether it's a Muslim family or a Christian family. It's just part of the culture that if one family murders someone from another family or kills someone from another family, the other family is culturally obliged to then carry out retaliatory blood avenging. So just as an example, actually, I'm going to provide a few examples, but as one example is reported right here in this, this is from the Irish Times from 2 decades ago, that now this is an extreme example, but it's an example nevertheless of there was a family feud when 13 men from a single family were charged with the killing of 22 rival clan members in Upper Egypt. There were 6 other, took place in broad daylight and ambushed a van filled with family members of one particular family. They ignored the driver apparently because he was not a member of the clan. And so that's pretty wild. Now, that is one particular instance, and it might be just an extreme outlier, but apparently it's a tradition. This is from 6 years ago. This is someone written. They said very little is written or known about a certain aspect of the culture of Upper Egypt, the tradition of revenge killings, also known as blood feuds or vendettas. And it goes on, but even though there's not really a lot apparently written about it, it was actually, you know what? I'm going to take a moment. This man recounts this story. When I was a child, 5 or 6 years old, there was a war like this between 2 families in our street. My little sister and I were inside our house with our mom when it started. My dad was not there. He was working. There was a fight going on outside our door. Families were shooting at each other. I was sitting with my mom inside the house, scared. There were a lot of guns. The shooting went on for about an hour or 2. We had a dog. Okay. Our house did not have a roof. My mom and my sister and I were in one of the corners of the house. My little sister was crying and mom was holding her and me to her chest as we hid in the corner. So far, no bullets, etc., etc., etc. Nothing. The next day, everything was normal. Like nothing happened. They took the dead man to the grave. I take that back. Finally, the fighting stopped. My dad came home. He was really worried about me, especially. My father and I were very close. Later, we heard two people had been shot, and we finally were able to leave the house. In the evening, we found out that one of these two men had died. The next day, everything was normal, like nothing happened. They took the dead man to the grave, and that was it. But the family of the killer knew revenge was coming. Apparently, they are for family honor. If you kill my brother and I don't kill one of your family, I will be ashamed in the village. Everyone will be talking about me and say he's not a man. He could not do it. He is not a man. It is for the honor of the family, both Muslims, Christians, and the police would love to interfere with all of this, but they cannot. If I kill your brother and you want to kill me, you will not tell the police I did it. You will just wait until you have a chance to kill me. Someone gets killed in the middle of the day and no one tells who did it. No one in the village will go and tell the police who did it. It's a cultural thing. The police have nothing to do with it. But it's only grown men. Women and children are not part of this. When a boy is young, he cannot be killed in a revenge killing. The enemy family has to wait until he is grown to kill him. When you have a boy and you feed him and you take care of him and you make him a man, and then he's killed, it's worth more to the family who kills him. His family worked hard to make him a man, especially if he becomes something. He studies and becomes something in life, then he's worth more. But the family of the victim takes the body to the cemetery and buries this person like anyone else. However, the tradition of revenge killing does not allow the family to hold a funeral for this person. They have to wait until they take revenge and kill someone from a man from the enemy family. Only then can they. Okay, it keeps going, and as you can tell, this can go on for decades and decades and decades. So this is a pretty wild phenomenon in our day, not 1,000, not 2,000, not 3,000 years ago at the time of the Torah, now. And it's Upper Egypt. So this is Egypt, similar part of the world where the Jews were experiencing. They experienced Egypt. It might be a different part of Egypt, but that this still persists to this day is pretty, it's shocking to our Western minds. And yet this type of incident, which I just mentioned, this ongoing culture in Upper Egypt still provides a fascinating insight to what the Torah here is trying to stop. It's trying to stop this cycle of violence. Okay, so let's dive in to the Torah text. There are many verses here, as you can clearly read. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I do want to point out some of them because I'm actually curious. I want to talk a little bit about the cities of refuge, and as you can imagine, there's a lot to talk about. And we could even continue next year in talking about the cities of refuge when this Torah portion rolls around again. But I actually, so I'll talk a little bit here and then go into a specific aspect. So God tells Moses, tell the people, when you cross the Jordan into the land of Canaan, you shall provide yourselves with places to serve you as cities of refuge, to which someone who has killed someone, who has slain a person unintentionally, may flee. The cities shall serve you as a refuge from the avenger, so that the killer may not die unless he has stood trial before the assembly. The towns that you thus assign shall be 6 cities of refuge in all. 3 cities shall be designated beyond the Jordan, and the other 3 shall be designated in the land of Canaan. They shall serve as cities of refuge. These 6 cities shall serve the Israelites and the resident aliens among them for refuge, so that any man who slays a person unintentionally may flee there. Anyone, however, who strikes another with an iron object so that death results is a murderer. The murderer must be put to death. Okay, so all these different types of situations. The point I want to, so clearly, as opposed to what I opened up with, this notion of these honor killings, blood avengings, you want to do it for your family's honor, this retaliatory murder. But what if it's just an accident, right? Someone, I think this now comes out of the book of Exodus. Well, just one example is, what if you're chopping wood, and the metal flies off of the axe and it kills someone, right? You didn't set out to kill this person. And so this says, look, for that person that accidentally killed someone, you can go flee. And this is also really interesting that it's also not restricted to Israelites, to Jews. Even Gentiles who live in the land can also make use of these 6 cities of refuge. Now, I think for me, what I found particularly interesting is the geography. right? Y6, Y3 and 3. I'm not necessarily going to say we're going to get to all the answers. And there are probably a lot. Look, we're Jews. We've got opinions. I wanted to focus on some early rabbinic notes, comments on the geography of these cities. So I wanted to first start off with the Mishnah, which it says there are 3 and 3. Okay. Now, this is really interesting. Until the 3 cities of refuge that were in the land of Israel were selected, they could not be admitted to the 3 that were in the east of the Jordan, as it is said, until all 6 of them admit unintentional murders as one, which is also okay. So that's interesting. But now we get into some stuff from the Talmud. So I want to quote something here from the Jerusalem Talmud and some aspects, some items from the Babylonian Talmud. So when they came to the land, they designated another 3. Neither of them were giving asylum until after they conquered and divided. So this is something we get a little bit of this in this week's Torah portion, where there's 2.5 tribes that say, we want to hang out here on this side of the Jordan, not in the land of Canaan. So they said, we need to conquer the land first, and then you can really figure out settling this. Okay. After they conquered and divided, the land became obligated for sabbaticals like Shemitah. We're currently in a Shemitah year, and also for Jubilees. This is the 50th year, which is like an extra year of Shemitah, of that resting year. And these were giving asylum. The 3 cities which they were designated in the land of Israel were parallel to the 3 cities which Moses has designated in Transjordan. This is on the other side of Jordan, like 2 rows in a vineyard. Hebron in Judea parallels Betzer in the desert. Shechem on Mount Ephraim parallels Ramoth Gilad. Kadesh in Galilee parallels Golan and Bashan. Kadesh in Galilee parallels Golan and Bashan. So even though they had designated, Shechem, even though it designated Shechem on Mount Ephraim, it could not give asylum. They designated Kiryat Yearim in its place until they conquered Shechem. Even though they had designated Kadesh in Galilee, it could not give asylum. They designated Gamla in its place until they conquered Kadesh. It was an interesting historical piece, obviously going way back. Okay. All right. So this is now we have a similar that was in the Jerusalem Talmud. Now in the Babylonian Talmud, we have a similar text here that again, the cities were like 2 rows in a vineyard, right? So they were actually essentially parallel. So you have city, and another city. So you had Hebron in Mount Judea, corresponding to Betzer in the wilderness, Shechem in Mount Ephraim, corresponding to Ramoth in Gilad, and Kadesh in Mount Naphtali, corresponding to the Bashan. Okay. The 3 in the land of Israel, as Meshulashim lines of demarcation, dividing the length of the land into 4 equal parts. So this is a clever arrangement. So that the distance from the southern border of the land of Israel to Hebron, the southernmost city of refuge, will be like the distance from Hebron to Shechem, and the distance from Hebron to Shechem will be like the distance from Shechem to Kadesh, and the distance from Shechem to Kadesh will be like the distance from Kadesh to the northern border. So it's not just 3 random cities on one side of the river and 3 other random cities on the other side of the river. It's no. The 3 cities in the land of Israel are basically equidistant, portioned out. So there are 4 quadrants of the land of Israel, at least in a latitudinal sense. And it also makes sense because it makes it fairly equidistant, that if you're in one part of the land of Israel, it makes it easier to get to that city of refuge. And then the other 3 just are mirroring it. As they say, it's kind of like two rows in a vineyard. It's very clever arrangement. It's very structured, very nicely structured. It actually makes me think about how I have to mention this. I'm sorry, but like we're here in Ohio and we have 88 counties, and that they're fairly roughly similarly sized, and that every single county's capital, the seat of every single of the 88 counties here in Ohio, is right in the middle. So there's a certain equidistance going on. Okay. Another early text I want to share is this is really fascinating. One does not establish these cities of refuge in small settlements or in large cities, rather in medium-sized towns. And one establishes them only in a place where water is available. But if there's no water available, one brings them water by digging a canal. and one establishes them only in a place where there are markets, and one establishes them only in a populated place. If the population of the diminishes, one adds to it. If the number of residents diminishes, one brings them priests, Levites, and Kohanim, Levim, and Yisraelim. Okay. I wanted to throw this in. This has nothing to do with geography, but it's just incredibly smart on the rabbis' behalf. They said one may not sell weapons or hunting tools in these cities of refuge. The people who went there died because they're there only because they killed someone else, even if unintentionally, but there were still mortal elements. So you cannot sell weapons or hunting tools, according to this is the statement of Rabbi Nehemiah. Really smart, right? And the rabbi said it's okay. They permit this, and so they agree that one may not spread nets, nor may they braid ropes, so that the foot of the blood redeemer will not be found there. Okay. It's still, I mean, look, it's understandable from the rabbi's perspective that you can still allow at least hunting tools. People still need to eat. But really incredibly clever on Rabbi Nehemiah's to say, look, why do they end up there? Like, let's try to prevent even people who accidentally killed someone. Maybe they weren't being so careful, but who knows? It does not necessarily have to be something that is intended to kill people. So anyways, those are some things I wanted to share as far as the cities of refuge. And I think also, like the story I was mentioning earlier of what we see contemporarily, clearly this was, I mean, look, it's not to say that this was exactly what we see in Upper Egypt today went on 3,000 years ago, but that this still resides with humanity and still is people, there are cultures that do this. Certainly this happened thousands of years ago. And to see this, obviously the wisdom of the Torah to say, look, we need to stop the cycle of bloodshed, the cycle of violence. Let's see what we can do. It's they didn't mean to kill the person. And for people who did mean to murder someone else, okay, we'll put them on trial. There'll be a certain order, right? We can't just have just people running around killing people, because that just won't end. So thoughts, Debbie?
I think it is extremely interesting in comparing what the rabbis have said in locating a city and the size of the city in comparison to Ohio.
Oh,
That's
thank you.
Very interesting.
Thank you.
But what the rabbis have said about placing a city in the middle of an area and keeping it small and allowing residents to have, tools, which could be tools for hunting or tools for gardening, I think is very, very smart.
Yeah.
And very intuitive, and expresses a lot of foresight.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really think that.
Yeah. It's experience.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And they're using it wisely and understandably for us as people trying to follow the Torah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Before we go, I want to just acknowledge that all Jewish life and programming here at Majestic Care of Cedar Village are due to the support of Jewish Home of Cincinnati. Thank you. All right. With that, thank you, everybody, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom to you.